the home also of top common sense guests like Claire Pearsall, who joins me now. She's a former Conservative government advisor. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Awful lot to talk about. I mean, Elon Musk is taking on everyone, basically, and everyone's taking on Elon Musk. Keir Starmer, rolled up his sleeves, because that's what you do when you're trying to talk business. Trying to talk about the NHS yesterday, ended up with, actually, it turns out, some pre-written statements, because, this is how plodding this man is, our Prime Minister. He can't even guarantee answering a question about Elon Musk without having it all scripted for him on the autocue. This Surrey press conference he gave on the NHS yesterday. By the way, no one's talking about the NHS today, because that's how utterly nothing that announcement was. But he's come out, he's basically attacking reform, he's attacking Tories, he's attacking Elon Musk, he's attacking everybody. Accusing Musk of spreading lies and misinformation, anyone calling for a grooming gang inquiry jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has hit back. She accused Starmer of smear tactics. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, doing an interview this morning, has been asked about his views on immigration and asked whether he stands by some of his views that he's expressed before on his attitude towards people coming here, and asked if he stood by the comments where he said in a tweet earlier just a couple of days ago, importing hundreds of thousands of people from alien cultures who possess medieval attitudes towards women brought us here. As in, you import a load of people from Pakistan where it's an awful lot of the people who come here come from pretty much medieval lives, living in effect. I'm sorry, the reality is pretty much, mud huts, people marrying cousins, women have no rights in any meaningful way, attitudes towards women, gay people, non-Muslims from this particular area in Pakistan. They are not the views of modern Western society. He was asked if he stood by those views, and he said yes, he does. He said some immigrants who come to the UK have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. Now, we're asking about that today because I want to know what your reaction is to that, because he's basically saying that is what led to the grooming gang scandal. He's right, isn't he? I'd love to know your thoughts, so give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can send us a message on X, assuming Elon Musk allows us to, at TalkTV. Don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Is Robert Jenrick right, or is he wrong to say or to think? Is it okay to think it and not say it, or do you? Or is it? You never know what the rules are this week. But Robert Jenrick says some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly, he says, medieval attitudes to women, and that is what brought us here, i.e., led to the grooming gang scandal. Claire, is he right?
I think he's got a point, and you've seen.
No. That's a political answer. Is he right?
I think he has a point. What we
so
don't
if he has a point, then you think he's right?
I do think he's right. There you go.
That's
the only time I will ever agree with him. But what's missing in his grand statement is what he's going to do. It's all very well to put that statement out there. He's been in government. He's
a shadow minister. He's not going to do sodding anything.
But he's also been in the government.
Yeah.
At very high levels. He was in charge of the immigration brief. I don't remember him being this robust when he was in government, and I think I would respect him more if he had been. So what are you going to do about it? And I think this is a good start to a conversation. Yes, he's right. The attitudes towards women from parts of those areas is appalling, has no place in society in the United Kingdom. What are you going to do about it? There's nothing. There's no
Well, we know
suggestion.
a lot of people are suggesting, certainly even across Europe as well, they are talking about, some of the parties, the AfD and others, also being backed by Elon Musk, about mass deportations of people. That's what they're talking about.
And people bandy that around quite a lot, and I think that
we don't even deport criminals.
Exactly. There are a lot of things that we don't do in this country for people who have committed some really heinous crimes that should be out of the country, and they're not. They're either languishing in jail or we can't.
Although a lot of people would say they shouldn't have been in the country in the first place. But there is a reality. Now, this is something I remember being very, very aware of this from days in my local newspaper in the 90s. I was working on the East London Advertiser at Bethnal Green, London, where you had incredible difference there was white working class communities, there was the new white middle class buying up all the little apartments overlooking the Thames and, near Tabriz, all looking very lovely. They didn't mix. And then there was also the Bangladeshi new arrivals. They didn't. 3 different communities. Everyone's going, isn't it wonderfully diverse? No, it wasn't diverse at all. It was 3 different communities, none of whom mixed at all. Local schools went within a matter of years from being sort of 90% white to 90% Bangladeshi. And it was just a really, it was a massive change. And it was very, very, very clear to me very early on, which is why I was someone who would put my neck out on this issue very early on, that these were people, a large number of people were coming. The women largely didn't speak English. No, there was no compulsion on them to speak English. They were not in any way integrating, assimilating, taking on British values, agreeing with British values. It was very obvious to me early on that this was a bad idea. And I've been writing about this stuff since that time and had the usual slurs against me throughout that time. I'm pleased that people are talking about this. I think there is a very strong argument that we don't want to have large numbers of arrivals who aren't very thoroughly vetted for their skill level, English language level, and their opinions and views, coming from countries which are, to all intensive purposes, backward medieval societies. And I'm sorry, if people are upset by that, they need to go to these countries and have a look. Where girls who don't agree to marry who they're told to marry, whether it's a cousin or a man who is 20, 30 years older than her, are killed, quote, honour killing, not an honour killing. When things like many practices around the world, FGM on girls, when you have practices, not just forced marriage, but cousin marriage, which leads to massive levels of disability in children, where if you leave the religion, you face death. I'm sorry, we are looking. This is medieval stuff. This is how Britain was, 1,000 years ago. It's not what we want to live in now. Why would we want to import people from those countries? And what can they possibly offer this country?
Well, I think that's a really good point. That what is it that they're offering? Because the majority of them don't have a skill set that we need in this country. They are low-level workers at the best. Their grasp of English is really poor. Their female, whether it's a sister, mother, auntie, cannot speak English. And you're right, there is no compulsion for them to do so.
Yeah,
so we need to look at that.
Well, it costs us a fortune every time someone goes to the doctor or to the benefits office to provide a translator. I don't know why we do that either. I really don't. I find that absolutely extraordinary. So, question: is Robert Jenrick right or not? This is a reality. Shall we finally let this scandal actually? Can we talk about the real issue? What is really going on? Because my view is, we have enough criminals of our own. We've got enough child abusers. No, child abuse didn't start happening because we imported a load of men from Pakistan. It's been happening. It's been happening. The vast majority of crimes against children are committed by white people, because the vast majority of people in this country are white. White people, largely white men. Let's talk about the realities. But we didn't need to import anyone new to do that. That's kind of where I am on this. What do you make Kemi Badenoch hitting back at Starmer and talking about these these smear tactics? Because this is kind of what meant that no one talked about this, no one prosecuted it. Even the Times newspaper that broke the story originally, it wasn't Elon sodding Musk who did this. It was Andy Norfolk at the Times, who years back, was it 2011, 2012? They were warned off these stories because of the accusations of racism and Islamophobia.
Yes, they were, and that's an appalling state. And this is. I'm in two minds about having another inquiry, but I kind of side with Maggie Oliver, as you said, who knows what she's talking about. And the Alexis J report that we had didn't look into specifics on grooming.
Stuff.
Yeah, and I think we need to address that. You need to look at the communities involved in it, not be afraid to call them out. Why are we so afraid to say that these were mainly Pakistani men raping children?
Genuinely, it's amazing to see, even people like Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper actually using these phrases when, 2 or 3 years ago, they were shouting, racist and bigot at anyone who actually said this. It's all being denied. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, made a statement last night, so obviously rushed out in response to this, basically promising this new law to tackle child abuse cover-ups. Basically, you will face if you are in a professional position or in a job of trust, so like, you're a football coach or a scout leader or whatever, that if you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a social worker, policeman, if you are aware of child abuse and you do not report it, you will face not just professional misconduct charges, you could well face criminal charges and you could face up to 2 years behind bars. Well, this was something that was called for by the Alexis J report 2+ years ago. Now, the Tories are saying, oh, you should have brought this in. Well, yeah, where were you? I mean, no offence, but you had 2 years to do this. They failed to do that. Now, we're told by Robert Jenrick this morning that actually they were in the process of bringing it forward. Very little urgency. I mean, the idea that there wouldn't have been cross-party support and that the Tories didn't have a big enough majority to push that through. But we also, by the way, got an announcement today, this new law on online deepfakes. I do find it extraordinary how absolutely obsessed this Labour government is, and your lot were just as bad with anything going on online. Oh, hurty words on Twitter, or like, I completely understand if someone made a video of you without your knowledge and put it onto a porn site or shared it with your colleagues. Absolutely horrific. By the way, no one wants to see that. I know what you think you might look like having sex. You don't look like that. It looks awful. But also the online deepfake, so that it looks like it's you, but it isn't you. Incredibly distressing, really harmful. It really, really, really damages people's lives and their mental health. But it's not as bad as children being, plied with drugs and beaten and tortured and set on fire and gang raped, by men old enough to be their grandfathers. It's not the same thing. No. How could you possibly prioritise a law on the sodding internet over the reality of protecting an 11-year-old girl from being anally raped? What is going on in the minds of these people?
I mean,
I'm sorry, I feel strongly about this.
You're right. Why is it that we're so worried about the internet? Because it's easier to deal with. It's easier to go, we're going to put some nice laws together and we're going to stop this bad photos going around of people. Yeah, all right, traumatic. Not as traumatic as being raped
it's the actual
and killed,
reality.
And ignored. Because those children were ignored for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But one of the other recommendations was for a child protection authority, which has the power just to go in and inspect anybody, any place that has contact with children. And then you can link that to...
Again, it's another quango, isn't it? It's another body. It's just...
Yes, it is. But
why
it
don't we
has the
just
power
require everyone to do their job properly?
Well, should we just require everybody not to touch children inappropriately? That would be a start.
Yeah, how hard is that to actually... I mean, again, it's a thing that absolutely blows my mind, whether it's social workers, whether it's, nurses, doctors, whether it's what's happened at the BBC with Jimmy Savile. Across the board, all of these stories, the thing that blows my mind, and I think every normal person's mind, is you knew about child abuse and you did nothing about it. Or actually enabled it. I mean, the social workers, the police, basically, and the Labour, it was Labour councillors in all these places.
Yeah, it was.
Enabled this. There is no doubt at all in my mind that there, when people talk about this being like a political, bandwagon and like, there's no doubt at all. But this is a political story because it was happening in Labour councils with often Labour Muslim councillors who are helping to cover it up, a fear of the damage it would do. The main reason there is not going to be a Labour inquiry, they do a review and inquiry on pretty much everything. I think they've announced like 50 or something since they've come to power. There's a review on social care. We don't need another review on social care. We know what needs to be done. And you've got the votes. You can push anything through. You've got 412 MPs. Labour, you could do anything you want. Get on and do with it. They push everything to the long grass. But they say they can't have a vote on this or a review on this and an inquiry. We know why. It's because it's going to expose that it was actually a Labour cover-up, which is what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't want that to come out because they want to be able to brush it off and say, it was the Tories, they had 14 years, they did nothing about it.
Yeah. Oh, there's also failure. I mean,
yes, it is. Yeah,
on all your houses, as always.
Well, of course, and that's the problem with politics in this country. Yeah. But by calling it a bandwagon, by labelling it far right, all he's trying to do is distance himself from the fact that there are Labour Party members and councillors involved.
Absolutely. Can we just end, just before we go to a break, with some good news, though? As we were predicting on the show yesterday, Justin Trudeau, Canada's first black Prime Minister. I mean, literally, how many times has that man done blackface? I mean, I'm sorry, like... How is it possible to have blacked up that many times in your life? Pretty much. It's a fancy dress party. I'm going to black up. I mean, really? It's weird. It's weird. Mr. Woke, Mr. Climate Change, Mr. Woke, Mr. Correcting everyone's pronouns. Absolutely awful authoritarian man. He stood down yesterday. Well, he's going to stand down when they've got a new leader of the Liberal Party in Canada and as Prime Minister. He goes the same way as, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, yet another authoritarian leader. His clampdown on people in Canada over lockdown, the outrageous, I would say, criminal treatment of the truck drivers who were protesting against basically mandatory vaccines to drive their trucks was so outrageous, and I'm still astonished by how many world leaders, the supposed Democrats, Liberals on this side of the ocean, didn't say a word about it. I mean, goodbye and good riddance to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he follows Jacinda Ardern and her failure to look after children by locking them out of their schools for a year during the COVID pandemic. She wanted to eliminate child poverty and made it worse. And didn't tackle the housing crisis, was an abject failure in that respect. Same as Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he just yapped on about, Indigenous rights, this and that. Absolutely trashed the Canadian economy.
It did. What about the housing crisis in Canada? Where's that? Still just as bad.
I hope so. That the election is due later this year. The Conservative Pierre Poilievre looks like a very good bet. It looks very sane indeed.
He certainly does. But then I saw Mark Carney's name put into the mix.
Now, Mark Carney, the former Bank of England governor. He's well, that's one of the reasons why we thought he left the Bank of England, because he wanted to go back to Canada, getting pretty hopeful, and then Justin Trudeau clung on. The other thing also about Justin Trudeau is a classic, absolutely classic nepo baby. He was born into political elite. His dad was Prime Minister of Canada as well. He just thought it was his birthright.
Yeah, he thought he'd give it a go. His dad did it, he could do it, and he could pass that on. But you actually have to have an ability, and I think he failed to remember that. That you had to have some.
Well, and again, he got away with it for years. He's the longest-serving Prime Minister in the G7. Extraordinary. That's how much change there's been. Well, leader anyway. We'll see how things work out for Macron soon, eh?